Hey party people, it's your girl Kay, and welcome back to the Reformed Party Girls podcast.
And I'm Ray, and this is a podcast where we share our journey from the wild nights out, drinking, and late night adventures to a calmer, more mindful life in sobriety.
Today we're going to talk about an experience that happened a couple years ago when I was 24 years old. Me and Ray were friends, and it changed my entire life. It's a hard one to talk about, but I'm really happy to share my story with you, our viewers. I watched my neighbor get murdered.
That's wild.
I know.
I still can't believe that.
I can't either. It's I used to really wonder, why me? Why did that happen to me? But
take us back. What?
Yeah, so it was a Monday afternoon. I remember it really clearly. It was around 3 p.m. I was getting ready for work. My shift was at 5, and I was out on my deck having a smoke. So in my apartment complex, how it's set up is you have a bunch of units set up. You have 2 upper units and 2 in the basement. And so I was on an upper unit, and we have a little deck that's connected to my neighbor on the left. Then there's a little shed, and then you have 2 other units that are duplicate on the other side of that. So I was sitting having a smoke, and I just hear a bunch of commotion, screaming and yelling, and drawers opening up. Don't, right? And I was like, what is that noise? And so my neighbor on the left, who I shared my deck with, came out, and she was like, dude, something's going on. This is weird. It doesn't sound normal. And I was like, maybe it's the kids playing, because there were young kids who lived there. And she's like, no, it definitely seems like something else is going on. So, smoke's still in my hand. I'm like, I'll just go check and make sure everything's okay. So I walk down the steps, and I'm pretty short. So when I get to the ground to walk over to their unit, I can't see up on their deck. So I walk around, I still hear a lot of noise, and I go up their stairs. And when I kind of get halfway up the stairs, I can kind of finally see onto their deck, and their back door is wide open, and there's my neighbor, a woman, halfway in between her door and her deck, lying on her tummy, and a man's on top of her, stabbing her.
Oh my God.
And she looks at me, and she reaches out, and she's screaming, help me, help me. And I panic. I don't know what to do, and my fight or flight takes over, and I run. I start screaming. I'm like, he's stabbing her, she's getting murdered, shit's going down. And I run straight into my other neighbor's place, and I have this full-on mental breakdown. She's calling 911. I actually got to listen to my 911 call.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, when I went to court and I had to prep for trial, I had to revisit all that stuff. Oh, and it was it's really intense just to hear that panic in your voice, right? Because you don't reach that point often
you
ever.
never think you'd witness someone fucking getting murdered.
No.
Why?
And it's that, just fear and curdling, and it's crazy to hear, because in the call you can hear me being he stabbed her 50 times, there's blood everywhere. So once the 911 call is done, I'm again freaking out, and I'm worried about work.
Well,
yeah.
Your mind doesn't go.
Yeah, I'm in shock. I don't know what to do, and I'm oh my God, I work in an hour. What the fuck?
Oh,
so I called D, and I'm crying, and he's like, why are you calling me? And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do. And he's like, call 911. And I'm like, they're on their way. And he's like, okay, I got your shifts covered. Like,
were you scared like the guy seen you or was gonna come after you, or did he see you at all?
He did. I was, but I was able to get into my neighbor's place, and where my apartment is, like, you can look right now, like, all of our back doors kind of face each other, and like we're a bunch of apartments that are all the same. And so I just remember all of the neighbors, like, from other apartments coming out. This one guy came out with, like, a hockey stick. It was the most Canadian thing ever. Like, someone's getting murdered and, like, your weapon of choice is a hockey stick.
I guess that's all you have.
Yeah.
Right?
But all the people, like, some neighbors came around, and he stayed in the apartment. Like, he didn't try running or anything. And the police arrived, like, 5 minutes later, and they arrested him in the apartment, covered in blood, with weapons. Yeah, and then the police went around to all the neighbors, because at this point, right, everyone's outside. Everyone's like, what is going on? And they take a bunch of us down to the police station to do, like, our statements. Yeah. And it's crazy because, you know, too, at this point, I was into my addiction. When I finished my statement, I got them to drive me to work.
Yeah, oh my God.
So I could go get drunk.
Yeah. How the fuck did you work that day? Like,
well, I didn't work. I just went there to drink. But I'm like, why would I go there? I could have gone to, like, any bar to drink, but I went there. And then my auntie and my cousin came to pick me up, but I was not in a good state at all. It really affected my life for a long time, and because I lived right next door. This is like another layer to that point in my life. Is like the apartment I was living in. I was living in it after I moved out of the punk house, and, like, you know, that, like, did not end well. I don't think, like, any four of us roommates ended up talking or being friends with each other. Like, it ended really badly, and I moved my mom and my brother out into this apartment with me. The relationship with my stepdad wasn't going well. It never was, but my mom wanted to get out, and so I was like, okay, cool, I'm working, you're working, why don't you and Liam come move into the city with me? And we got this apartment, and my mom was really into her addiction, and I didn't know this at the time, but she was taking pain meds from my grandma, and my grandma is one of the people who in, like, the 80s was given Oxycontin for her pain and became an Oxycontin addict because of her doctor prescribing it. And so when my mom moved into the city away from my grandma, my mom was going through really bad withdrawals.
I bet.
And my brother was having a hard time adjusting to life in the city. And one day I came home and she told me my brother was sick. So they were going out to see the doctor in Spruce Grove, and they never came back.
Really?
Yeah. My mom continued to pay her portion of the rent for 6 months and just never came back. So I was 24 years old, living in this apartment that my mom and brother were living in with me, and then they one day just left and never came back.
Oh.
So at the time of the murder, I was by myself, and I didn't have anyone. So when I would go home at night, I would be alone, and I didn't have any family in the city, and I would lie in my bed and just think about how that family used to literally be in the bedroom just on the other side of the wall from me. Mm-hmm. And I think for that first bit, I didn't sleep at all. I went and saw my doctor a lot, and I got put on a lot of medication. I was on Zoloft, Trazodone, Ativan, and like, yeah, right?
What
Like,
are all those for?
Zoloft is an antidepressant. It was one I'd taken before, but got put back on it. But I was at a very high dose. I think it was 200 milligrams I was taking. I was on a very high dose of Trazodone as well. It was 50 milligrams. And then I had Ativan to help me with my panic attacks. But again, like being a drug addict, of course, I would abuse my sleeping meds and the Ativan, right? So I did get time off work. The apartment complex helped me cover rent because I couldn't go to work for a little bit. And I did get a lot of support from victim services, which I just heard the Alberta provincial government just cut funding to.
Really?
Yeah.
Of course, like
Yeah.
those bastards.
Those bastards. I just heard they cut the funding for it, and I just look about my situation and how much they helped me in all of it. So, yeah, it took a lot of time to kind of get over and kind of stop having my nightmares about it. And it's crazy how the universe works, because right when I thought I was over it, I got a knock on my door. And to give you a sense of how much time had passed, it had been 2 years. It'd been 2 years since the murder happened. And I get a knock on my door, and I answer it, and it's an officer subpoenaing me to court. They had finally gone to trial, and he had decided to plead not guilty, even though they caught him in the apartment covered in blood with the murder weapon. To give you a little bit of context, like more into it, the family was a family from Africa, and they had moved here to get away, and they had 2 kids here, and they went back to Africa to go visit some of his family, and he stole their passports, and he pretty much kidnapped them and kept them there, and they couldn't get back into Canada without their passports. And while he was there, I guess he started marrying other women, because I believe it's a part of their culture. They're from a country called Senegal. So yeah, I don't know how it happened, but the woman and her 2 kids were able to get their passports, and they fled the country and came back to Canada. And so they were free of him. Yeah. But he didn't like that. Women do not disrespect men. Mm-hmm. He can marry a bunch of other women, but, she has no rights of her own. She's his property. So he came to Canada to look for her. And he found her. And the story that I heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but the neighbors were all talking about this for quite some time, but apparently he couldn't find her when he was here, but he was at a grocery store, and he ran into a mutual friend, someone that they both knew, because they had lived in this city for a little bit before they went back to Africa. And he was asking the neighbor about this woman, his wife, and I guess that person gave him her address.
That person must feel so bad now.
I bet. And yeah, they said when they arrested him that he had like condoms in his pockets. I don't know. I don't think he raped her or anything, but I think there was just some weirdness to it. Their 2 children, thank God, because it was around 3:00, had just gotten out of school and decided to go play at the park that day and not go home. Yeah, they had the universe was watching over them that day, because I don't know if it would have ended up good for them, or if the story could have been much crazier. But got subpoenaed to go to court, and so I had to go, and I had to go prep because they were expecting to do a full-on trial, like witness statements, all this. And to give more context, because because the family was from Africa, like the little girls actually ended up going back. So there was no one really here in Canada to give that woman justice, because all the family was kind of back home in Africa. And so and none of my other neighbors wanted to testify.
So none of them did?
No, I was the only person. And a big reason they got me to do it is, like, they said it's really important that we have someone that can stick up, because it will help determine the length of time he's in prison and the length of his service, right? If there's no one here saying that, like, it affected their life and that, you know, he could ask for less time, especially in the trial sense. So I prepped. It was about 2 weeks of prep. I had to watch my, like, statement video I took at the police station. I had to read my statement I wrote. I had to listen to my 911 call. They had to prep me questions, so I had to practice my story. That's why I was so good at telling it. Yeah, so I went into full-on prep mode, and when you do that, you relive all of your trauma. So all of that time I had worked on not forgetting it, but learning how to live my life with it was kind of all out the door, right? I kind of stopped sleeping again. My night terrors came back, you know, because all of it is fresh in your memory. And the day before the trial began, after I did all this prep, he changed his plea to guilty. And there was no trial.
Good. That probably would have been even more hard.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, because I'm like, well, if he had just pled guilty in the first place, I don't think I would have had to do all of that stuff. But again, too, maybe it was just like I needed to go through that again to see how I'd handle it, right? And how to process all that trauma and stuff. And then the day in court, I got my support group to come, because I was going to be able to present my victim statement in front of him. Mackie was there. I invited you. My mom was there. My auntie was there. And that girl Emma. We're going to... that fucking bitch. We're not friends anymore. She burned me hard. But Emma was there too. Ray couldn't make it into the court, by the way.
Oh my God. I drove there trying to find parking. It's downtown Edmonton. And I only have Visa debit. And those don't work on the parking meter. So here I am driving around all over downtown trying to find parking, stopped at so many different spots. My card wasn't working, and of course I don't have any change. It's cutting it close to the time. I'm losing my shit. I'm like, fuck. Like,
it's downtown Edmonton, right? Like
losing my mind, because like I want to be there for my girl, right? Like I want to be there to support her, and I could not fucking find parking. So I was so mad, like road rage hardcore. So finally, like, I don't know if I called you or texted you, like, so sorry, girl. Like I can't.
Yeah, you're like, I can't find parking.
It won't take my car. But thankfully, she had a support group there with her, and then I did get to go for lunch with them afterwards. But oh my God, I was so pissed.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Well, it's even and too like this happened like. I don't, either during or right after COVID. So even the court system itself, like in court, like everyone's in masks. We couldn't sit together. I remember like only a certain number of people were allowed to sit in, and we had to sit, you know, like the 5 feet apart from each other. But I remember looking, it was the first time I'd seen him since the murder when they brought him out. And he's not chained up. Like he's just walking free. I'm pretty sure he had like an iPod and was like listening to music the whole time. It was really weird, but
unless it was a translator.
Maybe.
Possibly.
I don't know. I just feel like they felt like he wasn't dangerous. I don't.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I really don't know. But I found out he changed his plea because he didn't speak very good English. at all. So I think when they were like dealing with the law system, I think he had a really hard time understanding kind of what guilty or not guilty meant, or even like if he pled not guilty, kind of like what could happen to him. I don't think he understood that, but it was really intense listening to the prosecutors present all the evidence. I found out that he stabbed her 78 times.
Oh, fucking God.
So it was like a pure fit of like blind rage. You know, that clanging of like the drawers I told you about? He stabbed her with 4 different kitchen knives. One was a steak knife, a butter knife, like a kitchen knife, and another one. And in her back, he actually snapped one of the knife handles off, like he was stabbing her so much. It's crazy to think I lived with a lot of guilt about it because, I was the last person she saw alive, right? And her face, in my mind, will always be there. I'll always see that look on her face when she's crying. Ooh, I'm getting a little emotional. I haven't really felt this way about this in a long time, but seeing someone so helpless, I lived with the guilt for a long time because I thought, like, maybe I could have helped her.
You couldn't have.
But I know I couldn't have.
No. He could have killed you as well?
I know, and something really great that my mom said to me during all this was like, at least she got to see your face before she went to heaven, Kaylee. Yeah. She got to see someone's face that wasn't his. I hope I was the last thing she got to see, but it was a lot, and the trial was long and boring, but it was really interesting to just hear what he did to her. It was crazy. But at the end, I did get to stand up and do my victim statement, which I think finally gave me closure for the whole thing. And I really, really needed that for my life. And I actually have it. Is it okay if I read it out?
Yes, yeah? Read it.
I just, Ray and I were talking about doing this story on the podcast, and I Googled in my Gmail my victim statement and it popped up. I'm like, I can't believe. So this was from 2018. Okay, I'm going to blow it up because I'm old now.
No, you're not.
Okay. Witnessing this event has forever changed my life. Through time, I have been able to readjust back into society slowly. In the beginning, I experienced an overwhelming amount of shock and trauma that negatively affected my day-to-day. I couldn't control the sadness that would overtake me, causing me to become ill. This made me erratic at work, around my friends, and with my family, even with strangers I had met for the first time. This trauma controlled my life and caused my mental illness to heighten. I had lows and I had highs and no way of controlling them. To cope with this, I became a heavy drinker. I was a heavy drinker already, so it just made me heavier. And I went out often to drink, not in a social way, but in a way to forget. I have spent countless hours with therapists and doctors working on coping tools and a mix of medications to help me survive and live with my trauma. I take medication to help me sleep because I live in fear of the accused, and medication to help with my panic attacks that occur. The incident occurred next door to where I used to live on a beautiful Monday afternoon. Quickly turned into the worst day of my life and into something I would have never thought in my 24 years of life I would ever see. I have to remember, I was so young. Yeah. I was really young when this happened. Yeah. The chilling sound of screaming still haunts me. I long contemplated if I had done the right thing by running and not helping. To the family, I am so sorry there was not more I could have done. I live with that regret every day. That's why I'm here, to bring justice to you and to those two girls who now live without their mother. Something that my mother said to me is that she got to see a face, someone wanting to help before she passed into heaven, and that God sent me to let the victim know that she was not alone. The trauma from that day continued to follow me, as this event is not easily forgotten. I continued to live next door for 5 months before I moved. Every night when I went to bed, I could not fall asleep. I was extremely terrified that the offender would find me and kill me for seeing what I saw. I lived in total fear in my own home for months. There was a period where I had not slept for 3 days and had a complete mental breakdown, which made me reach out to the crisis line to help with my mental state. Though my fear lessened when I moved, it still carries on, and I don't think there will be a day that I don't fear the accused. At work, I had a hard time performing duties and working in higher volume situations, as it would cause me to become overwhelmed and break down. It was hard to be around people. The incident has cost me lost time at work and peace of mind. My relationships with my friends were tested. No one knew how to console me. I would go to them with my trauma and expect that they knew how to make me feel better. I look out and see my support here, and it gives me strength, because even though they don't know what it's like, they have been here for me every step of the way. They've had to see their friend broken, and they in turn have felt the effects of this. This is not a singular trauma, but a tragedy that has hurt a community and all those connected to it. The relationship most damaged by the incident was with my family. For them to see what I was going through hurt them, because they couldn't help me. They saw me the day of as I screamed and cried in bed for hours. They heard my nightmares come through while I slept. They saw the dark spiral I went down as my mind tried to process the trauma I had just experienced. They have been by my side for this insane and scary chapter in my life, and I know it must not be easy for them to see how hurt this has caused me. But they are here, and I am here, and we are all so happy that justice has been served. I have only just recently begun my healing. I deal with this trauma every day and will for the rest of my life.
Oof,
yeah.
Strong. You're so strong. And you said you looked him dead
I looked him dead in the fucking eyes. I did. And I felt so much power. And like I said, since that day, I haven't had another nightmare about it.
Good.
Yeah, right? It's crazy how your brain can like process it and cope with that stuff. And you know, I was upset when I got that knock on the door, and I'm like, I gotta go through this all again. But the universe has a way of telling us, you know, like when we're ready for something. And, you know, I had thought maybe I had processed it, but I hadn't, because I hadn't closed the book on it. I hadn't given it closure, and this did. And I was able to go off my meds. You know, I was able to get back into some normalcy. And, you know, there was a time where I used to drop flowers off on the porch. I still live in the same building complex too, everyone. If I look out my window, I can see it. But I used to drop off flowers every year. But the last couple of years, you know, the anniversary isn't a date that sticks out in my mind anymore. You know, when it comes to that time of year, you know, I kind of give it a thought, but it doesn't really last long. And yeah, sometimes I forget. Sometimes I forget it's happened, right?
Well, you've healed from it, and I'm happy for you, and you're so strong for doing what you did and going up there and doing your witness statement and looking that motherfucker straight in the eyes. And I hope he fucking rots in jail.
I hope so too. It's just weird to think about it all.
Yeah.
And
probably feels like a dream now. Right?
It does. Yeah, I too, I really hope that like the justice system does right and he's in there. I sometimes worry that because there's no one here to be like, no, that motherfucker needs to stay in there, that like one day it'll be parole or something. And
do you know if he could ever appeal or anything like that?
I think he got I can't remember his charge either. It was
but he's here in Canada.
He's here in Canada. Yeah. I think it was 45 years before parole. It was really intense. It was pretty intense because they caught him with everything. So it's crazy how life throws that at you. Yeah. Life and death is like an interesting one to grasp. And I'm here. I'm stronger.
And you're thriving and
yeah,
doing well in life.
I do have a funny story. So I was working at the pub when this all happened. Do you remember Peter, one of our regulars, Peter, yes. with the glasses?
Yes.
Okay, this is so funny. So the pub was across the street from a hospital, and I was in my feels. I was drinking a lot. And Peter comes in and he's talking and he's like, yeah, I'm a therapist. And I fucking...
Is he? Bullshit.
He's like, I'm a therapist. So I grab my beer. I sit next to him and I start fucking crying. I trauma dump hard on him. And he's let me go on for like maybe an hour of just like tears and drinking and talking about the murder. And he's like, I'm a respiratory therapist. I help children breathe.
Why weren't you clear about that, Peter?
Yeah, he was like, you're feeling things, and I thought I could help. And he's not a therapist. He helps people breathe. He's an airways doctor. But I just remember bawling my eyes out and being like, I need a therapist so bad right now.
Did you ever go to therapy for that? Or?
I did for a couple weeks through victim services.
Okay.
I love therapy.
Yeah, me too.
I love it.
Yeah, I go like once a month. It's the best.
It is so good. Do you journal?
Yes, every day.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm one of those people now.
See, look at us. It goes to show that it does get better. I find time is like your biggest variable when it comes to healing, and there's no need to rush yourself. But eventually, over time, it gets easier to live with, right? And I think that's the most important thing. It does change you, and it's good to be able to recognize that. And it does shape you as an adult, but it doesn't have to have that control over your life, right?
Yep, and the universe always throws things your way because they know you can handle it.
Fuck. Damn you, universe.
That's enough for now, universe.
Yeah.
No more curveballs.
But we appreciate you listening, and if you have any questions about our lives or other stories you'd like us to hear, or any more questions about the murder, we're here.
Yeah, we're here. Reach out.
We're your girls. We'll talk to you next time.
Like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.